Sure. Well, you could say, I'll just say here, I'll start here because if we're going to talk about chronic pain, we need to understand the landscape we're working in,
Yeah.
which is any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more.
Okay.
Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial. The brain can't tell the difference between one kind of pain and another. It all sends the same signal to the brain. It hurts. So the
Interesting.
brain can't tell the difference between a bone that's not healing and a broken heart.
Wow. Is that true?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
It all sends the same signal. So in chronic pain, um, we have a stress response in the body that arises to meet a threat when we have a threat in the environment. It's physiology and biology that comes up, and we meet the threat, and the threat's done, and then the stress response goes back into the off position. In chronic pain, the stress response gets stuck in the on position, and that's really toxic for us. So again, any pain 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more, chronic, right? And why is that a thing other than the stress response is stuck in the on position? Because now the nervous system is stuck in this, what's going to happen next? So it kind of vacillates between that, oh my God, run away and shut down, and run away and shut down, or fight and shut down. And it does this back, and it's very toxic for the brain.
Yeah.
Anybody who's had a chronic pain experience or knows someone who's had this experience will recognize the symptoms of, I can't remember stuff. I just put my keys down and where did they go? So our memory gets distorted and kind of like cloudy. So brain fog is part of it because of all the stress hormones. And we get a really pronounced negative mind. So we normally have a little bit of negative bias in a healthy person, so that like we meet a new thing in the environment and our first answer is no. Sure, well,
Hello, and welcome back to the Passionate Pioneer podcast, series 3. I am Beth Taylor, of course. I am the Passionate Pioneer, and this podcast is your connection to spiritual awakening experiences and the path to joyful living. Today, I'm joined by Elizabeth Kipp. Hi, Elizabeth.
hi Beth, so glad to be here.
Yeah, great, great. Um, for people that don't know anything about you, Elizabeth, would you mind giving us a quick introduction before we dive into your amazing story?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm a stress management and historical trauma specialist. Also addiction recovery coach, ancestral clearing practitioner. Um, it sounds like a lot of stuff. It's all under stress management. They're just little aspects of it. I work with betrayal trauma recovery. Um, and I got into the work in 2014 after finally healing from a 40-year stint with chronic pain.
Yes, I see that you deal with chronic pain, and we always teach what we know. We always
Yeah.
coach what we know and what we've been through ourselves and the
Mhm.
experience. So that's interesting. So let's go back to the beginning then. So 2014 is when you started dealing with it, but you
No,
obviously
it's when I started my business. That was
right. Okay, so take us back to the beginning of the story, wherever you want to start, Elizabeth. How did it start
Oh,
for you?
sure. Well, you could say I'll just say here. I'll start here because if we're going to talk about chronic pain, we need to understand the landscape we're working in,
Yeah.
which is any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more.
Okay.
Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial. The brain can't tell the difference between one kind of pain and another. It all sends the same signal to the brain. It hurts. So the
Interesting.
brain can't tell the difference between a bone that's not healing and a broken heart.
Wow. Is that true?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
It all sends the same signal. So in chronic pain, um, we have a stress response in the body that arises to meet a threat when we have a threat in the environment. It's physiology and biology that comes up, and we meet the threat, and the threat's done, and then the stress response goes back into the off position. In chronic pain, the stress response gets stuck in the on position, and that's really toxic for us. So again, any pain 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more, chronic, right? And why is that a thing other than the stress response is stuck in the on position? Because now the nervous system is stuck in this, what's going to happen next? So it kind of vacillates between that, oh my God, run away and shut down, and run away and shut down, or fight and shut down. And it does this back, and it's very toxic for the brain.
Yeah.
Anybody who's had a chronic pain experience or knows someone who's had this experience will recognize the symptoms of, I can't remember stuff. I just put my keys down and where did they go? So our memory gets distorted and kind of like cloudy. So brain fog is part of it because of all the stress hormones. And we get a really pronounced negative mind. So we normally have a little bit of negative bias in a healthy person, so that like we meet a new thing in the environment and our first answer is no, to keep ourselves safe. And then we reassess, oh yeah, that's actually safe after all. So that's kind of like a thing. In
Right.
chronic pain, that gets accentuated. So the world's bad, I'm bad, the pain's bad, like my life is bad. So a lot of, and that can get twisted and really affect our self-esteem. So we kind of collapse. We collapse kind of over the heart. We're kind of hunched forward physically. We collapse over the heart. Now we can't breathe well, and we've collapsed all of that on our self-esteem as well. So it's really quite a powerful space to be.
So everything's exacerbated, basically, right?
Oh
I've
yeah,
got
yeah.
it.
All the negative stuff is exacerbated. Yeah.
That's incredible, though, that the brain cannot recognize the difference between a broken bone and a broken heart.
Not in terms of pain. Yeah, it's all the same.
That that's incredible, isn't it? And
It's interesting.
I've heard and I've talked about this before, the way you can retrain your brain.
Oh, hmm.
You can basically you can say, okay, I'd like to change that and change the pattern.
Sure. Yeah. Well, in this case, what we're talking about is we're actually not changing brains, how the distinction between uh, physical pain and emotional pain. We're not changing that. What we are changing is the chronic stress habit. That chronic pain habit is a chronic stress habit, and we've now the nervous system has got this is how we do life. We do life like this, right? And that, as I said, is very toxic. And this is the work that we do to heal from chronic pain. Is we bring in modalities that heal the changes that happen in the brain, and then the brain comes back to normal. But opiates and benzodiazepines, by the way, pharmaceuticals don't heal those changes.
Well, we already know that, don't we? We already know they're
We
not in the
do, but you
business of
can't.
healing. They're in the
You,
business of making money, right?
right, you can't say it enough because it's like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Try to get some homeopathic remedies or natural remedies, or try to take care of yourself a bit better. That is difficult when you are in the throes of chronic pain, but actually, and there's not all doctors are bad. There are doctors out there that are helpful. However, the medicine that they pump into our bodies is basically toxic, isn't it?
Well,
The
I would
things that
say
they
that opiates and benzodiazepines are appropriate if, like, I was just in a car accident and I can't sleep because of the trauma.
right.
Few days, uh, now we're starting after a few days of that. Now we're starting to deal with a toxic situation because opiates depress the breath, the respiration, so we're not getting we release 70% of our waste comes out of the breath. So we're not bringing in good fresh air, and we're not oxygen and stuff, and we're not releasing the toxins, right? It also paralyzes the digestive tract. So now we're not taking in food properly. So we're now not digesting our food properly or eliminating it. So now we've got toxic buildup of that. And it dehydrates us. So now we're not getting enough water into the cells. So none of that is healing. So a few days to help us with the stress and the shock of the initial trauma, it makes sense because you actually need a little space to deal with that. But after
Yeah.
that, now we need to bring in meditation, and we need to bring in TENS units and acupuncture and Reiki and whatever, other things. Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree. They're short term,
Yeah,
definitely short term solutions, but you've got to find, the root cause, and you've got to find the long term.
that's right. Yeah. So to get back to that, so I laid that out so that when I talk about my story, you'll kind of understand. Oh, I see what happened there.
Right.
So I was born, and my when I was born, my mother went into a severe depression right after she delivered me, and she exited for 9 months. So I was like, "Where's mom?" Right? There was a separation right there. And I
Mm.
was born with a closed pyloric valve, so I couldn't take in substance by that's the little valve that opens at the base of the esophagus to let contents into your stomach, and it
Okay.
was closed. And they didn't have NICUs back then. When I was born, I guess they kept me going with an IV for a while, but my
Mm.
pediatrician put my whole crib on a 45-degree angle, and after 2 weeks, gravity opened that pyloric valve.
Isn't that clever?
I swear that she was like divinely guided on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was pretty cool. So mother's gone, not enough not enough food coming in. I can't get what I need. So I'm already starting in a kind of a frequency of what happened. This is uncomfortable. I can't get what I need. Where's that familiar heartbeat? All that kind of stuff. Um, and and then they put me on formula because my mother didn't. Well, she wasn't there, but she also didn't breastfeed. So that's sugar. So it's like that's not helpful either. There's a lot of sugar in that formula. So, that's really the gateway drug to addiction, by the way. Um, and and so really trauma is, but the sugar's not helping.
Right.
Um, and anyway, so dysfunctional. My mother was bipolar. Um, so a very dysfunctional family. We
Well, I
had
was
a lot
going
of,
to say, I was going to interject there about your mother actually, and maybe it was postnatal depression, but
oh,
she was,
definitely.
she had postnatal depression, but she was also bipolar. Was that
Yeah.
diagnosed before or afterwards?
She had undiagnosed and untreated bipolar disorder
Right.
for the first 25 years of my life.
Right. Okay.
Like,
Well, that sounds
like
like the Nina Simone story because they thought she was crazy until they realized that she was bipolar.
they called my mother eccentric.
Yeah.
It was the way they did it in my world.
Right. So that's a
So
rocky start then, isn't it, to your
yeah, so
to
that
your
was so it was
journey?
kind of like walking on eggshells, and I never knew, not so much, I didn't know from day to day, but I didn't know from hour to hour, like, am I going to get yelled at, and am I going to get hassled, am I going to get hit, am I going to all the things. And I wasn't allowed to emote. And so it was like, sit down, shut up, we don't want to hear what you have to say. And then there was, I asked you a question, answer me. So it's
Yeah.
like,
I
you
know
didn't
that
have to.
feeling. I know that feeling. Listen, we're the generation that we're not allowed to have an opinion, right? Just sit down, be quiet. Here's a book to read, or here's some pencils, draw something, or
exactly. And then
Go and play outside, right?
they had me in a college prep school at pre-kindergarten, and they didn't hope that I would excel. They expected that I would excel, and I'm left-handed and I'm a little dyslexic, and they didn't know what dyslexia was back then.
Right,
So I had this like learning thing, and I just spent a lot of time. It takes me a lot of time to learn a new thing. Once I get it, it's there. But it takes a while for this brain to like process new information.
right,
Plus, I had it dysregulated. My nervous system is digital. Of course, it's going to be difficult to take in new information when there's this dysregulation in the nervous system.
right,
A lot of challenge. Well, I just described the setup for chronic pain. And that's not even talking about the accident I had when I was 14 and broke my back. And that created a whole cascade of surgeries and stuff later.
So when you talk about the chronic pain then and trauma, is it always, or do you find that it's mostly from childhood or from birth sometimes?
Well, who you're sitting in front of. I mean, I work in
Well, you're the
historical
perfect
trauma.
example of that. But is
No,
that the norm, Elizabeth?
no, it's actually, in when you talk about culture, white culture that's colonialized, quote unquote, white culture
Right,
that's colonialized, we've got so much separation in our society. One of the aspects of that one of the ways that shows up is that we think about trauma in terms of this life. From an indigenous point of view, which is more unity, right?
yeah.
They always put the word intergenerational with trauma. It's not trauma, it's intergenerational.
It's
So
ancestral.
it's a continuous. So and my experience really doing ancestor clearing for all these years is 11 years now. And then my own experience of life with my own, I'll get into that in a minute. The answer is we carry it from the generations. And I
DNA?
and
Your
I felt it.
DNA, is that correct?
I felt it when I was 4 years old. I'm sitting in my living room and I'm noticing this heavy thing in the house, in the family, and I didn't have words for it at the time, but I personally felt it in my body, and I felt it in the people around me, and I felt it in the air, and I didn't know what it was at the time. What we're talking about, it was,
I used to have dreams where I would be paralyzed in bed at 4 years old, and I would see all these different faces, older faces from obviously ancestors,
yeah, yeah.
and
It's we
they would just come
everybody
one
has.
after the other, after the other, after
Wow,
the other, after the
that's
other.
that's
Yeah,
amazing. But
yeah.
it's not unusual that people have these experiences, and we don't have at that age we don't have words for them. And
No,
it wasn't until about uh, I don't know, 12 years ago that I was actually able to, oh, that's what that is, and now I can clear it,
yeah, because it's not that we had words for it, but we also had nobody to talk to. Like
Yeah,
now, you could
yeah,
probably talk to your parents, and they would probably, like, I would understand. Right?
yeah,
If
yeah,
my child started saying that, I would say, "Oh, tell me more. What's happening? Let's look at
yeah,
that."
yeah,
But you had nobody to talk to because you weren't allowed to really speak, and then you didn't have words for it anyway. So they would just think you were off your rocker if you told them about a dream or
yeah,
this heavy energy that you felt in the room, right?
yeah. So you asked about the DNA,
Yeah,
and I'll say this. I'll say Rachel Yehuda and her team have done scientific studies on uh, people that have descendants, so ancestors that were in the Holocaust,
right.
and versus population of people that weren't, and the people that have this experience of the Holocaust in their lineage, they process stress differently than we do.
Interesting.
So that I love that so much because it actually underlines and kind of uh, explains in the sciencey terms what spiritual teachers have been telling us for thousands of years, that we come into this life with the gifts and the burdens of our ancestors. And
Right,
that's an actual study you can point to. It's not the only one, but that's an actual study. They've
right.
done studies with mammals, other mammals than us, and they can track this stuff. So what I say from an evolutionary point of view is that the information that we're born with is nature's best guess at what it thinks we're going to have to deal with in this lifetime.
Right.
And yeah, we do come with the burden, with the frequencies, with the, well, really the frequencies, the energies, um, and I at frequency feels about right, of unresolved burden in the lineage. Like everybody listening to this will relate to somewhere in their family, like there's a scarcity thing happening. There's not enough, I'm not enough, you're not enough, it's not enough, the world, all the things, right? The paycheck, I don't have enough, whatever.
Hi, I just wanted to pop on here just to say thank you so much for being here, watching this video, and supporting my channel. It is my honor to bring you these stories from these incredible women who are passionate about their lives and have alchemized their spiritual awakening journeys from service to self to service to others. If you would like to be part of my Passionista community, just grab a free copy of my workbook, which you'll find a link below. It's called Your Passionista Journey Starts Here. And start making those small changes to your life that you need right now. Thank you again for being here. Love you to subscribe and hit the notification button so that you know when all the new weekly episodes are live. Thanks again, Passionista. Much love and joy. Now let's get back to the interview.
That there's that piece, and then there's worry energy, right? Which is really, you can look at that in terms of safety. Like how all of our ancestors had to deal with safety issues.
Yeah.
So that energy that's coming through the line, through the DNA, and this is not science. This is me energetically, kind of guessing, kind of that that this is the information that we need, the best guess that that and it's plastic. Like the information comes in and it's a little bit, it's not precise. It's kind of like it's a guess, like I said,
Bit
and
foggy.
and so the system has some noise in it, right? But the information keeps flowing, and we managed to survive from one
Well,
generation to
I
the
read
next.
recently that we as humans, we are, we were built to survive and thrive. I mean, most people survive. They're not thriving. There are a smaller percentage of the population that's thriving, but most of it, what we are born to thrive and adapt. That's what our
Yeah,
brains help us
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Our bodies,
Mhm.
is we're built to
Yeah.
be troopers, right?
Well, you could say that about, I think you could say that about any organism. And the key thing you said there was adapt. So how any given individual in any population, how is it how good is it at adapting to the changes that its environment is, that it's meeting in its environment? And if you've got rapid change, then they've got to be able to adapt rapidly,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
that, then you're talking about thriving. That's an organism that can, that if it can adapt quickly, that's one that's really got that thriving thing going on. But some of us are impacted. Some of us are impacted differently. by the changes in our environment.
So we've got the basic story, Elizabeth, and we've got
Yeah.
the basic understanding
Mhm.
of your background and how you came into this and started your business, your coaching business, to do something positive
Uh-huh.
in 2014. What was the critical turning point for you, the spiritual turning point, as I would call
Oh,
it?
yeah. So I had all this surgery and I had this chronic pain and they were giving me medicine and we were trying to stabilize the slip. I broke my lower fifth lumbar and in two and the front part slipped forward and pulled the leg nerves with it and they were worried I wasn't going to be able to walk and anyway, so we it took a few surgeries to they had to build a kind of a steel box around it to hold it in place.
Oof,
It's kind of what
right.
we did. And that ended up being the solution, but there was an awful lot of pain and they didn't know. And so their answer was, this was what they said. You can't heal from chronic pain. Here are your opiates and your benzos. This is your best quality of life. And I'm like 29 years old or something. And I'm like, what? And I had a science been trained as a science researcher in my 20s. So I'm sitting in front of an expert and I'm like, well, the expert just said that. And learning to bow to the expert because science. And
Oh,
and I
okay
was
then. Thank you for that.
I was devastated. And I went home and I was like, and I started crying and I cried for 2 weeks. But while I was doing a crying, I was like, there's something wrong with this picture. What is it? And I felt like I was in this dark closet and I couldn't find the doorknob and I couldn't find the door to the doorknob. Like, but I knew it was there somewhere. And I kept searching, what am I missing? What am I missing? And finally, after 2 weeks, I was like, aha, they made an error. Science is not about facts. It's about probabilities.
Correct.
And they said, you will not heal. And I was like, no, that's not how it works. And so there was that. And the other thing I knew was I had this big light bulb went off in 2 weeks.
Right.
And this the other thing was, oh, scientific paradigms change. And they're working in a model in the current paradigm. So just because they say it's the way it is doesn't mean it is,
Right.
right?
You can
And so
change you can
so I
change the
knew
words.
I
You
knew
can
that
change your words. What do you mean I
well,
won't? You mean I
I knew
will?
that I knew that there was I knew that there was more to the eye than they were telling me. And I also knew science is a self-limiting model. So it can only comment on that which it can observe, measure, and describe. But where do we live and where do we heal? We live and we heal in the all that is, not just in the part that science can observe, measure, and describe.
Right.
So I knew I was going to have to look outside of that framework as part of my journey to healing.
Or maybe
And
within,
well, wherever, but not in that
but not
framework.
to them.
Right? And well, I mean, I had, yes, that framework and, both. And I also knew because of my training as a researcher that they were probably telling me more about the limitations of their model that they were working under than they were telling me about the body's ability to heal.
And I think that's true, right? I think that's so
And
true, Elizabeth. I think they still have no understanding of the body's capabilities of healing itself.
well, they have a limited framework
Limited,
that they're
correct.
working in, and they do that by design because like the insurance and the protocol and all the things,
There's
and it doesn't matter. One of the things I learned from all that, other than the fact that I stepped into my own power, right, that was the turning point you asked about.
right.
One of the other things I learned from that was that it really doesn't matter what healer I'm sitting in front of. It could be me or you or a doctor or an acupuncturist or whatever. It doesn't matter. All of us, we're all operating under with a lens that we're looking through. And we can't see outside of that. We have protocols, we have, like in ancestral clearing, I've got ethics. I stay within that lane. People ask me stuff outside of that, I can't answer it. Right. So I'm really aware of that when I sit in front of somebody, and I try to be aware of not asking the questions outside of their protocol. As an example, you'll laugh when you hear this. I broke a bone some years ago, and I knew what I just told you, but I have forgotten the moment. I'm sitting in front of an orthopedic doctor. He's checking out my healing, and at the end of the appointment, I look at him and I say, "What are the foods that can help me grow my bone?" And he's like, "There aren't any." And I was like, oh God, I just asked a question outside of his outside of his protocol.
Perfect example.
Because of course there are foods that help heal a bone, but it's not part of his training, so he can't. Right. So this is what I'm talking about. We have to, and I was like, oh, that's when you ask a stupid question, you're gonna get a stupid answer. In
Right.
that case, it was I don't like saying stupid question, but in that case, it was an inappropriate question, and I get an inappropriate answer. Right?
Yeah. And that's true, isn't it? It's what's true for you. And if you believe that you can heal yourself, and if you believe that you can, that there are foods that can help you to heal your bones, and if that is true for you, then you can explore that. But asking somebody where it's not in their, where they've got some strict rules or guidelines,
Right.
you kind of you hit brick walls. So you've got to ask the right questions to the
That's
right
right.
people.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So it's just another thing that I learned the hard way. It's just like, yeah. Anyway, so that was my turning point. My spiritual turning point was, oh, I need to have a wider lens here. And also, I always had a sense of a higher power and source, but it wasn't, Beth, until that experience that I realized how much focus I was putting on the doctor as the focus of my healing instead of the intelligence within me.
Right.
And that was a pivotal point as well. So like, doctors can set a bone and stitch up a wound, and they can give you the best their best guess as to like this is the protocol that we want you to do to heal as quickly as possible. But but they can't tell the body how to heal. Only the
No.
body knows how to do that,
Yeah.
right? And it's up to us to follow protocol and then get the hell out of the way and let the body do the healing. You
Out
know?
of the way. It's true, right? It's true. And everybody, literally body, every person, every body is different. Everybody heals in their own way.
Oh
Some
yeah.
some foods work for some people, the same foods don't work for this other group of people.
Mhm.
You've got to find out what works for you, what's true for you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, so those were like the things that I got
Fascinating.
a real reorientation to the healing space from that experience where the doctor said, and they kept saying that for like years until I finally found Peter Prescott, who passed away in 2016, but he wrote this beautiful book.
Oh, right. The name sounds familiar, actually, but I didn't know the book, Conquer Chronic Pain. Okay. It's
Yeah,
not,
he
it's not
he wrote.
something I've suffered with, actually, but I do know other people in my life, in my spectrum, that
Mhm.
do have chronic pain, and this will be very interesting for them.
Yeah, he wrote that book, and he understood the nature of chronic pain. And what was interesting was I sat in front of him and the first time, and he didn't want to see my X-rays or my records. I said, I don't need to see, I want to know who you are. And I'm like, what kind of doctor are you anyway? And where have you been all my life? Nobody ever asked me that question before. It's just like, wow. So he was also a Qigong healer as well as a Western. So he had this
Right.
beautiful combination thing going on. And he had John Newton in his pain management program as a wellness practitioner that brought in ancestral clearing. So that was when I was introduced to the ancestral piece.
Right.
Yeah. So Dr. Prescott brought this very well-rounded program to bear, and I went in there with 40 years of chronic pain, and 52 days later, I walked out with no pain. And it's not like I was so special. He had a 94% success rate in that program.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's, so and he got everybody off medication as part of that protocol.
Right, which is really important, right? That's the key, I think, here is that, one of the keys is to, find an alternative and not to be on long-term toxic medication.
Yeah, well, we need
Right.
to let the body be clean enough so that
Yeah,
it can do what it naturally knows how to do.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so you talked a little bit about your the intuition and listening to your body, and that's something that resonates with me specifically and other women that I know is that, you know, I can tune into my intuition, but it's taken me a long time to stop and listen. But it's very difficult for people in a busy world to literally stop and listen to their what I call your inner Google, your intuition in a very noisy world. So how did you manage to do that? Obviously, this man helped.
Uh-huh.
Dr. Prescott helped.
Yeah.
Um, what other things did you learn on the journey about your when you started this? You finished the chronic pain, and then your next step was really tuning into your and listening to your body, I imagine. Would that be correct, Elizabeth?
Well, yeah, I um I I was in a treatment center to get off all that. I was on medication for 31 years. They had me on opiates and benzos for 31 years
Sure.
prescription. And the last 15 of that was fentanyl. So that's
Wow.
amazing.
Gosh.
Yeah. And so I like survived that, which is extraordinary. And so I was at a treatment center, and Peter's program was in that center. And there were 100 patients on campus, um, 400 400 staff people. So it's a nice ratio of support to person to patient. 20 of us went to Pain Track to Dr. Prescott's program, and the other 80 went to relapse school because they were really working with more alcohol and non-chronic pain stuff, although they were all chronic pain patients. They just didn't get labeled that way.
Right.
And which is another conversation. But I went to Pain Track, so I wasn't getting any training in relapse. And I asked my counselor, relapse being for everyone meaning that when you get off your whatever your addictive substance is, or addictive behavior. In my case, it was addictive substance. Um, and then you go back on it, right? So that's a relapse, right? So
Right. Right.
so she said, just defining that, right? So my counselor says, go to my counselor, like, well, what do I do about relapse school? Because I need to, like, what am I going to do about that? And she said, there's an 80% relapse rate in the first year. And like, I was like, in my mind, I was like, I'm doomed. I don't like the odds. And the second thing that I said to myself was, what's wrong with this model we're using if we've only got a 20% success rate, right? And I was like, when I get out of here, I'm going to do whatever I can to move the needle on that one,
Right.
right? So that's how I got into this work.
Right.
And I wanted to spread the message that you can heal from chronic pain, because they're still telling people they can't heal from chronic pain. That's still out there. So I just, that's kind of was my my orientation. Now, in terms of my intuition and my stuff, I was able to clear the chronic pain, but what I continue to work on is the chronic stress habit that fed the chronic pain in the first place,
Right,
which
because it
my
becomes like a friend, right?
well, it's the nervous system gets in a habit if this is how we do
Right,
life.
right,
And everybody listening to this will understand it when I say this. The chronic stress habit that we have is what's the next thing and how does it relate to it? And I'm missing the present moment altogether. So I've got a foot in the past and a foot in the future, and I'm missing the present moment where all the information is. And this is very
right,
hard on the nervous system.
right, right.
You cannot really access your intuition when you've got a foot in the past and the future and you're not even here.
Yeah,
So my journey has been, how do I build presence?
yeah,
How do I like stop time tripping, right? And learn to be here. And that started to rewire, unwind this. I was wound up like a top with stress, right? That began to unwind this habit, and I began to learn stillness, and I learned what serenity really was. So I still wrap myself up I could feel how I wrap myself up in stress during the day, because I do a breath practice in the afternoon, and I'm like, oh, feel that tension, but it's nowhere near like it was 12 years ago. Right.
well, that's great. That was my next question. Where can you share some of these practices or some of the things that you learned that
Sure.
help you?
Sure.
Interesting, you talked about your intuition staying in the present because I talk about where are you on your schedule? I always say to clients, where are you on your schedule? You've got this. Where are you? Because you're not anywhere on your schedule. Find some time for you. Stay in the present moment. Get grounded. Do something. So that's really lovely that you've touched on that. So talk about some other practices that you do that help you and have helped you.
Yeah. So the first thing is it really learning to leverage the power of the breath, because the mind follows the breath, which is very interesting. There's a we have this habit, right? The chronic stress habit. We got to get there. We got to get there. That's a habit, right?
Right.
Think about it in terms of this. In physics, they tell us that an object in motion stays in motion until it's acted on by an equal or opposite force. This thing I'm talking about, chronic stress, is a habit in the nervous system. It's an object in motion. And it's going to stay in motion until we act on it with an equal or opposite force. And you're asking, what is that, right? So one is learning the power of a conscious breath, right? There's a very powerful connection, not everybody else does, between a long exhale and the brain. It sends a calming signal to the nervous system.
Yeah.
And you cannot positively affirm your way out of chronic stress. The nervous system does not believe a positive affirmation.
No.
You have to meet the nervous system at its level, and then the mind will follow. So if the nervous system's calm, then you can slip in a positive affirmation. But if the nervous system going, no, 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 I'm not safe, then you can't, I'm safe, I'm safe. That's not going to work. You got to actually
No.
breathe, right? You've got to actually give it a signal that it's actually safe, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Breathing is lovely for that.
Yeah,
Meditation is the same, but that's the
that's the other
start
one.
of the breathe. The breathing is the start and the part of the process of the meditation, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. So that fundamental conscious learning how to really leverage the breath, I just can't say enough about it. It's very this to like 3-year-olds. I mean, it's so fundamental. This is something that we really should learn, but we just haven't quite yet. The
well,
other thing is that you touched on is meditation, which is, yes, you bring the breath in, but what are we doing in that meditation? Where just noticing what's happening, we're watching our experience, we're not getting hooked by it. Now, we do get a little hooked by it. We just come back to the breath and the present moment and keep watching. The thoughts go by,
Yeah.
what sensations are coming. So that now, before we had that experience, it was like, oh, I am my pain. In meditation, we're like, I'm having an experience of my pain, but it's not who I am. Huge difference, right? Game changer,
Yeah.
major change in that trajectory of like, I'm, chronic stress.
Yeah.
So now we got to practice because we got to have it. And it takes time, little by little, to rewire that. But, you want your default to be your place of serenity, not your stress habit. And the nervous system's going to go wherever it's used to being the most. This is why we have to practice and practice and practice, so that the nervous system's used to being in calm, and its default is calm and not freak out or chronic stress, right?
Yeah, it's a balance, isn't it? And meditation is not easy. And I always tell people to start with, if you can do 1 minute, that's great. Just start with 1 minute and just
Mhm.
build up from there. Because it's not about quieting your mind. Your mind will never be quiet. The moment you close your eyes and you start breathing, your mind says, "Oh, I've forgotten to do this, and I need to do this, and what about the shopping? And I've got to do this, and I've got to do," you know, and
Yeah.
and it's about understanding that that's okay. But you just let it go and just focus on your breathing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think breath work on its own without the meditation would be similar.
Well, yeah, I don't, I'm trying to think, I think, I think at that point they're kind of equal. Any breath practice is a type of meditation,
Right,
but there's just a lot of different meditations that use the breath in different ways.
right,
Um, the thing that I think is kind of fun about uh, this discussion here is this point of resistance that people discover in meditation. Oh, I can't do it. It's too hard.
right, right,
Well, I was in a meditation one time, and it was a kind of a new breath practice, and like, what's happening here? And as soon as that happened, it was weird. It was online. As soon as that happened to me, the teacher says, trust the process. And I was like, okay. And so and I started to relax. That was very interesting. And then he said this: when you meet resistance in your meditation, that's when you know it's working. Because it takes work to retrain. You can't just glide your way into retraining the brain. It actually takes work. So you
yeah,
actually meet your resistance, and that's your old habit going, hey, I want to stay in my old habit. And you're asking it to do something new. So the meditation is working. So hang in there.
right, exactly. Hang in there, right? Because you have to practice anything that you want to do. You have to practice anything, even if it's listen, your first day of school. Remember that was very scary. You had to learn new things. You had to identify who you were, and it's the same process. Anything that you do, right, Elizabeth? Anything you do, you always have a first day, but stick with it.
Mhm. Yeah. Also, now that you're talking about the first day in meditation, and when we're working in present moment in mindfulness, everything's a first moment. Every moment is a new moment. So we're all beginners in this moment. And sometimes I have one meditation teacher who talks about turbulence. Sometimes the mind is more turbulent than others in a meditation.
Correct.
And that's the way it is.
But you learn that that's okay.
But that's right. It's just, this is what I'm experiencing. And
Yeah.
so this again, we're standing back and watching the experience we're having. And we realize we're having an experience, but it's not who I am. I'm this eternal, soul having a human experience. And I
Right.
happen to have a very turbulent mind today.
Gosh. And when did we learn that? When did you have that truth about yourself that you were a soul having a human experience? When did that really form perfectly in your mind that that
Oh
was
my
the truth for
goodness.
you?
Well, I had to disengage the belief that I was my pain. Like I identified with my pain. Um, Dr. Prescott was very good at pointing that out. He said a couple things that shocked me. Within the first 5 minutes of of the first class of his I was in, he says, "What are you doing to contribute to your pain?" First question. And I'm like, I was insulted by that. And I didn't say it, but I thought it. I was like, dude, what are you doing saying such a thing in a room full of 20 chronic pain patients? And like, who the hell are you to say that?
Right.
Thinking that I'm the victim of my pain. It's doing it to me. I'm not doing it. That was my attitude, right?
Right.
I was like affronted by that question. Well,
Right.
it was funny because I did a double take in the middle of my attitude. And I was like, wait a minute, what did he just say? He just
And I'm
made
sure I have an answer here somewhere.
he just made the suggestion that I had some role possibly in my own pain experience.
Right.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
That never even occurred to me that I might have some power in that space because
Right.
I was so used to, being a victim of it. That was my orientation. I'm telling you, he had my attention at his first question.
Well, it's obviously it served a purpose. It was serving a purpose for you in some way
Well,
or another
it,
that
it
you'd
was what it was.
manifested this chronic pain. And that doesn't matter whether you'd broken a bone, you'd fallen, you'd done something, you'd had an accident in a car. It doesn't matter how you manifested it, but obviously it was you manifested it for a reason.
Well,
Would I be correct in would that be a correct assumption,
I
Elizabeth?
can't actually speak to that. I can speak to that. That was my experience, and the way I took it was that I was a victim of it. And he pointed out that I
Right.
had some power in that moment. I was like, holy crap, I've got some power in this moment. And so then he says his second thing he said was, don't judge the moment. And I'm like, again, with the attitude in my head, I'm like, dude, I'm just sitting here minding my own business. I'm not judging anything. So you can see I was a little peppery when I walked in that when I walked
Delancey.
in that class. But but I'm just saying, again, with the double take, he was talking about my pain. And I was like, oh my God, I've been judging my pain as bad my whole life. It's pain is not good or bad, it's information.
Yeah.
And like, okay, I never even thought of that because
Yeah.
my orientation was it's bad, you know, when we're little and the two of us bump together in a playground and right, what happens? All the adults rush to the area and they do everything they can to make that pain go away as fast as possible. So what's the
Yeah.
lesson? What's the subtext in that message?
Right.
Pain is bad. We got to get rid of it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said pain is healing, part of healing. Nobody ever said that.
No.
But pain is part of healing. Pain is
Correct.
information. It's not good or bad. It's like, and I have a teacher and friend, Gudaprem Singh Khalsa, who says this: pain is the currency of transformation. Be careful how you spend it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's information. How are you gonna, what are you gonna do with it? Like you said, like what you kind of talked about manifesting. I can't really speak to the manifesting thing. I just know that this is what was showing up in my field. And Dr. Prescott was like, girl, you got some responsibility here. Own it. You've got some power here. step in there. This is great, and
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons that I walked out of there 52 days later with no pain, was because he had a plan and a protocol, and I followed it. And
Yeah, and I
part of
love
that
that.
was
I
just
do.
unwrapping the mind around its, this is how I am. Yeah,
That pain is not necessarily bad or good. It's
yeah,
just information. I love that. I love the way that you
yeah.
the way that you describe that, Elizabeth. That's very interesting because when I say manifest, I mean it's just serving a purpose. It's information. What can you learn from it?
That's
That's
it.
that's what I
That's
meant.
It's an
Um,
opportunity.
just to clarify, yes, it's an opportunity. It's not good. Pain is not good or bad. It just is. What are you learning
Well,
from,
I
right?
hear that manifesting word. Some people will hear that and see, I made that happen. I don't know that
No.
I made that
Yes.
happen. I
Right.
didn't help it. I helped it along with my attitude.
Right.
Right.
Yes, exactly. That's
Right.
that is a very interesting story. What a great doctor to be asking you those questions to open up your mind on day
Mhm.
one, right?
Yeah, it was great. He was amazing, that guy. He was extraordinary.
I'm
And
sure.
also one of the funniest people I've ever met. Like, just like, which was kind of fun because it's a whole, group of chronic pain people, and we're all, doing adversity work, and we're working on, releasing emotional stuff. And he just, every once in a while he just throw this joke into the room and we all just crack up. Well, that's very healing.
I was just going to say that, Elizabeth. How healing is that to find joy with pain, right? It's so healing. So
Oh
tell
my
me,
God.
how has your daily life and your relationships and your overall sense of well-being changed since you've been on this
Mm,
journey of self-discovery, shall we say?
beautiful. Well, it's still a journey of self-discovery.
Right?
That's kind of the joy of the day. It's like, well, what's going to happen today, kind of thing, instead of, oh God, another day. It's like not like that. It's very different. I have a morning practice that I do that is a yoga practice with breath meditation that reminds my nervous system every morning, hey, this is how we're doing life. We're doing life like this today.
Right.
Right. So I start off that way. And and I have clients, and I'm in a recovery space. So I work in addiction recovery. Um, I go to meetings from time to time, and um, also I do the ancestor clearing, but also, like, I write poetry, right? I never knew I could even do that until I got, like, in this space. I never even knew that was in my field
Yeah.
until I got clear of the pain, and then all of a sudden that starts coming in. So,
Yeah.
I think the answer to your question is, I've I've actually been able to step into that thriving space and step into my potential, whereas before I kept myself pretty small and contracted. I'm pretty expanded these days.
Nice. Yeah. And it is joy is found in all those little moments, isn't it? If
Mhm,
you if you can step into some authenticity, follow and understand who you are,
mhm,
and understand the spiritual journey and trust in the process,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Then you can find and experience more little joy moments. I
mhm.
love that you do poetry. That's amazing. I write poetry as well. I find it really cathartic sometimes.
It's it's very healing. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very healing.
yeah, yeah. Um,
It's
I'm
also a
going.
great discovery.
Yes, yes. I want to finish with two questions, Elizabeth, just to wrap up. Two questions I ask all my guests. And the first one is, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
It's gonna be okay. It's already okay. Yeah, relax. It's really okay.
Yeah, that's nice. And the final question is, what do you hope your story will inspire in other women who are looking to live a more purposeful and a joyful life?
Well, really, if you listen to this podcast, you'll hear in this conversation how many times my perspective got blown open and how that served me. So, keeping an open mind and knowing that like there's a lot more than what's in this lens that I'm watching through right now. There's a lot more out there. And so I would say stay curious, stay open, and really follow your heart. That that's also been a huge part of my journey. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I.
Fabulous. A million thanks to Elizabeth for joining me today. Thanks to our audience for hanging out with us. We hope you found it inspiring and empowering. And you will find all the details about both of us in the text below. So until next time, this is the Passionate Pioneer and Elizabeth signing off. Bye. Wow, another powerful Passionista conversation. I hope that this guest's journey, experience, and story has inspired something deep within you. Remember, it's about following the joy moments in your life. It's a beautiful dance with the universe. If you would like to dive deeper into your joy journey with me, you will find all the links below this video, including a link to a free workbook that will help you to start your joy journey. And until next time, Passionista, I'll say goodbye. Much love and joy.